Right now, you're probably doing one of two things with your spare cash. Either you're putting it into an offset account, watching your mortgage interest shrink a little each month, feeling like you're making solid progress. Or you're buying ETFs, drip feeding money into the share market, hoping the long-term growth does the heavy lifting for you. Both feel responsible, both look smart on paper. But over the next 10 or 20 years, one of these paths will leave you significantly wealthier than the other. And that gap is bigger than most people think, because hardly anyone actually sits down and compares the real numbers side by side. So let's do exactly that today. Let's start with the offset account. It's a simple transaction account linked to your variable rate home loan. Whatever balance you keep in that account gets deducted from your loan amount before interest is calculated. So if your mortgage is $600,000 and you've got $80,000 sitting in your offset, your lender only charges interest on $520,000. Here's the part that hooks people. The interest you save this way is completely tax-free. You don't report it, and you don't owe the ATO a cent on it. It isn't income, it's simply interest you were never charged in the first place. At today's rates, with the RBA cash rate sitting at 4.35% and most variable home loans hovering around 6%, your $80,000 in an offset is effectively giving you a 6% tax-free return that the tax office can't touch. If you're on a decent salary in the 37% tax bracket, that 6% tax-free return works out to roughly 9.5% in a taxable investment. That number alone is enough to make a lot of people stop looking any further. There's something else worth knowing too. If your offset sits with a licensed bank, that balance is also covered by the government's $250,000 deposit guarantee. That's a layer of safety you simply won't find with shares. No volatility, no risk of loss, no watching your balance drop 15% in a rough quarter. Just a clean, consistent benefit every single month. Now let's look at what happens if that same $80,000 goes into ETFs instead. Exchange-traded funds give you exposure to hundreds, sometimes thousands, of companies through a single purchase on the ASX. In Australia, a fund like VAS tracks the top 300 listed companies, while something like VGS spreads your money across large companies in developed markets worldwide. The Australian share market has returned an average of around 13% a year since 1980, including dividends and franking credits. Adjusted for inflation, long-term real returns on Australian shares sit closer to 7 to 8%. Over the past 5 years, broad market ETFs have delivered somewhere between 8 and 11% a year, depending on the fund. Looking purely at the raw numbers, ETFs come out ahead. More growth, more compounding, a bigger balance down the track. But here's where it gets more complicated. ETF returns are never guaranteed in any single year. In 2022, many broad market ETFs fell between 5 and 10%. During the GFC, the Australian market dropped over 40%. If you'd invested $80,000 right before that crash, your portfolio could have fallen below $48,000. Markets do eventually recover, but that kind of experience changes people. It triggers panic selling, and it makes people abandon their strategy at exactly the moment they should be holding firm. Meanwhile, the person who kept their $80,000 in an offset saved the exact same amount of interest that month as they did the month before, regardless of what the market was doing. That consistency carries real psychological value, especially when your mortgage is large and your financial margin is thin. Now let's talk about tax, because something is shifting here in 2026. The federal budget has announced that from July 2027, the current 50% capital gains tax discount will be scrapped. In its place comes a new system where your CGT discount is based on actual inflation indexation, along with a minimum 30% tax rate on capital gains. For ETF investors, that means the old deal, hold for 12 months, get half your gain tax-free, is going away. Under the new rules, your discount depends on how much inflation moved during the time you held the asset. In low inflation years, that could work out worse for you.
And the 30% minimum tax floor means that even if your marginal rate is lower, you'll still pay at least 30 cents on every dollar of gain. None of this touches your offset account. There's no income being created, no capital gain being triggered, no legislative change that can erode the benefit. The interest simply never gets charged, and that's the end of the story. So does that make the offset account the winner? Not quite, because once you stretch the timeline out and let compounding do its work, the picture shifts again. Over 20 years, assuming a conservative average ETF return of 8% a year after fees and tax, that $80,000 grows to roughly $373,000.
The same $80,000 kept in an offset against a 6% variable mortgage saves you around $170,000 in total interest over a 25-year loan. That's a difference of more than $200,000 in favor of ETFs. And the longer you leave it, the wider that gap stretches, since compounding accelerates as the balance grows. But the offset strategy has an advantage that never shows up in a spreadsheet. When you pay your mortgage down faster, sometimes shaving 5 to 7 years off the loan, all the money that used to go toward repayments becomes free. That money can flow straight into investments, super contributions, or simply building wealth without any debt hanging over you. An offset doesn't just save interest, it compresses your entire debt timeline. It's worth mentioning, too, that roughly 28% of Australians approaching retirement still carry a mortgage, and 14% of retirees are still paying one off. The sooner that debt is gone, the sooner that financial weight lifts as well. There's also a third approach that ties both strategies together, and more experienced Australian investors are using it right now. It's called debt recycling. Here's how it works. You put your spare cash into the offset account, which reduces your loan balance. Then you redraw that same amount and invest it into income-producing assets like ETFs. Because the redrawn money is now being used for investment purposes, the interest on that portion of your loan becomes tax-deductible. In effect, you've converted non-deductible mortgage debt into deductible investment debt. You still get the long-term growth benefit of holding ETFs, but now the interest cost of that investment reduces your taxable income every year. It's one of the most effective legal wealth-building structures available to Australians who own a home with a mortgage. One honest note here: setting this up correctly can get complex, so it's worth speaking to a mortgage broker or financial advisor before attempting it. So, what's the real answer? If your goal is to maximize total wealth over 15 to 20 years, and you can handle the ups and downs of the share market without making emotional decisions, ETFs will almost certainly leave you better off. But if your cash flow is tight, if your mortgage keeps you up at night, or if a 20% portfolio drop would push you to sell everything and walk away, the offset account is genuinely the smarter move for you right now. Real wealth gets built when you understand how these two tools work together, rather than treating it as an either-or decision. Use the offset to build safety, pay down your mortgage faster, and give yourself breathing room. Use ETFs to build long-term growth outside the home. And when the time is right, use debt recycling as the bridge between both, turning dead debt into productive, tax-effective wealth. The most expensive mistake here isn't choosing the wrong strategy between these two. It's leaving $80,000 sitting in a regular savings account earning 4%, while your mortgage charges you 6% and the share market returns 10%. If this video gave you something new to think about, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. See you there.